Hey, Ellie, can you check these papers real quick?
Sure, Mom, what's up?
Just some boring bills. And this big envelope. Not even sure what it is. Leave it to me. I'll handle it.
That afternoon in Boulder, Colorado, the sky was filled with thin clouds, and dim light filtered through the old windows of the red two-story house. I, Ellie Harper, was used to stopping by my mom's house every weekend, like a habit that needed no reminder. My mother, Marlene, wasn't tech-savvy, and I, the eldest daughter, was always expected to handle everything. Any misplaced bill, any document left unattended, I was the one responsible for fixing it. I sat down at the worn mahogany dining table, my fingers brushing lightly over the messy stack of papers. The sweet smell of baked apple pie still lingered in the air from the kitchen behind me. I wasn't thinking much until my eyes landed on a thick cream-colored envelope with bold letters, estate plan and will. My heart suddenly froze. At first I told myself, don't be curious, just check it to be sure. But deep down, I already knew whatever I was about to find would not be easy. I flipped through the pages, my hand trembling slightly, until I stopped at the asset distribution section. In just one simple line, everything appeared, cold as a blade. House in Boulder, to Claire Harper. Savings account $460,000, to Claire Harper. Newly purchased SUV, to Claire Harper. Mother's wedding ring, to Claire Harper. Claire, my younger sister. The girl who jumped from job to job like chasing TikTok trends, changing careers faster than I changed phone cases. And me? Not a single mention. Not a single line, except for a cold, vague sentence. We love both our daughters. It felt like someone had just kicked all those years of my sacrifices out of the room. I gripped the paper tighter, feeling my knuckles turn white. Memories flashed through my mind like a fast-forwarded reel. Those times I drove through snowstorms to deliver medicine to my mother. Those weekends I spent repairing the leaking roof. Those nights I stayed up worrying about how to cover their mortgage payments. All of it now, condensed into a cold, dismissive line. Footsteps echoed lightly behind me, as if nothing had changed. Ellie, did you find the statement yet? Mom asked, her voice casual, as if she had no idea she had just shattered my trust. I stood up, gripping the will in my hand. My voice came out, oddly calm. Mom, is this real? She froze. Her eyes quickly darted to the envelope I was holding. Oh, Ellie, I just wanted Claire to feel more secure. Secure? And what about me? Before she could scramble for more excuses, my father, Robert, walked out from the living room, a coffee mug in hand. He set it down on the table with a sigh. Ellie, don't overreact. You're doing fine. Claire, she's still trying to find her way. I let out a laugh, dry and hollow, completely devoid of humor. Claire is 30, Dad. She still can't even pay her own phone bill. Meanwhile, I've been paying your mortgage for the last 4 years. The entire house fell into a heavy silence, the kind of silence that could swallow you whole. I laid the stack of papers back on the table, like laying down a verdict. Thank you for showing me where I really stand, I said, my voice even. No one called after me as I walked out of the house. No one reached out to stop me like they used to. That day, something inside me broke. Not my heart, but my faith. I realized that love does not always come with recognition, that sacrifice does not always lead to reward. Some families don't fall apart because of hatred, but because of quiet disregard, accumulated over each time they pushed you aside, each time they treated your sacrifices as an obligation. And the biggest lesson I learned that day was, if you don't know how to protect yourself, no one else will do it for you. The home I once poured my heart into now was just a cold red brick house in Boulder, nothing more. And for the first time in my life, I learned to stand up for myself, instead of for a family that no longer truly saw me as one of their own. I don't clearly remember how I drove home that afternoon. Everything outside the window was just blurred streaks of color. Only one thing remained sharp in my mind, the feeling of being discarded, of being made invisible within my own family. The days that followed passed by like a slow-motion film. I still went to the office, still met deadlines, still smiled when necessary, but inside, I knew I was different. A part of me had died that afternoon. The part that believed if I kept giving endlessly, one day, love and recognition would naturally appear. On the fifth day after that fateful afternoon, while I was sipping my first cup of coffee of the day, my phone buzzed. A text from Dad. Ellie, this month's mortgage payment is due. Transfer it soon. The deadline is Friday. I closed my eyes and leaned back in my chair, letting the lump in my throat rise and then dissolve. No words asking how I was. No explanation about the will. Just a simple command, as if ordering a money machine. I set my cup down, picked up my phone, and typed each word, coldly, just like the way they had treated me. I think Claire can handle it. After all, the house belongs to her now, right? I hit send. No waiting, no anxiety. 10 minutes later, the screen lit up again. This time, it was Mom. Ellie, don't do this. We need to talk. I stared at the message for a long time. The only emotion that surfaced wasn't anger, nor was it sadness. It was just an empty exhaustion, a kind of fatigue only those who have carried the weight of the world for others would understand. I set the phone down and didn't reply. 2 days later, another message came from Claire, my younger sister. Still using that sweet, light tone she always did to get forgiven. You're overreacting. Mom and Dad didn't mean anything bad. You're independent, but I'm still... I typed back slowly, each word like a blade. If you think you deserve to inherit everything, prove it. Start by paying this month's mortgage. No response. It was a strange feeling, like for the first time in my life, I had thrown the ball of responsibility back toward them and didn't rush to catch it myself. A week passed. Silence. The next Monday, while I was brewing a cup of chamomile tea in my small kitchen, the phone rang again. A transfer request for $2,900 from Mom's account appeared on the screen. No message attached. No explanation. Just the familiar action. Demanding. I pressed decline without a second thought. 4 minutes later, the phone rang again. It was Mom. I let it ring until the fourth buzz and then declined the call. Immediately, a message arrived. Ellie, I know you saw it. Why did you decline? I took a deep breath. There was no room anymore for softened words or fake tears. Because it's no longer my responsibility. Ask Claire. I hit send and tucked my phone into the drawer, like closing the door on an old era. I didn't know how long it took them to realize that this time, I wasn't coming back. Maybe to them, I would forever be the backup plan. The emergency rescue who they assumed would always step in to patch up the cracks they created. But not anymore. I had chosen myself, for the first time. And no one, not even a half-hearted apology, could drag me back to that old position again. I knew from here on out, there would still be psychological games, blaming messages and heavy words. But I also knew I finally had what I had lacked for so many years, the right to choose. No more letting others decide my worth. No more having my kindness measured like a duty. I sat down, sipped my warm tea, and looked out the window where the late afternoon sunlight shimmered. And I smiled. I had made it through the coldest winter of my soul. And I had survived. A week after I refused my mother's financial plea, the house in Boulder began to sway like a sinking ship with no one left to steer it. Texts, calls, even emails from them all sank into an eerie silence. The kind of silence not because they understood, but because they were floundering, unsure how to manage without the Ellie Bank they had once taken for granted. I thought I would feel guilty, but strangely, I felt lighter. Until Tuesday morning, when a knock echoed at my door. I pulled back the curtain and almost laughed. Claire. She looked like a TikTok fail video. Wrinkled hoodie, dark circles under her eyes, clutching a stack of documents like she was holding the collapsing world itself. I cracked the door open, arms folded across my chest, calm as if standing in a business meeting instead of facing the sister once treated like a delicate porcelain doll. Ellie, just give me 5 minutes, Claire panted, her voice tinged with desperation. 5 minutes for what? To borrow money? I asked, not even bothering to hide my indifference. No, not money, she mumbled. I need you to help talk to the bank. They're using all these technical terms. I don't understand. I tilted my head, observing the little sister who had always been held aloft like a balloon by our parents, with someone constantly clutching the string so she would never hit the ground. Now, that balloon was wobbling, about to burst under the pressure of reality. "Where's the inheritance money?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Claire looked down. "It's locked in an investment portfolio. If I pull it out now, there are penalties. I didn't expect it to spiral like this." I stifled a bitter laugh. She didn't expect? 3 simple words summing up the lifetime of irresponsibility I had watched unfold. "Then learn to face it," I said, gently pushing the door shut, leaving Claire standing frozen in the cold hallway. 3 days later, I happened to run into Tyler, an old classmate now working as a real estate agent, at a local art fair. When he found out I was Ellie Harper, his eyes widened. "Oh, your parents' old house on Vine Street, right? Heard they're desperate to sell, totally overwhelmed by debt." I just gave a faint smile. No denial, no explanation. Tyler hesitated as if wanting to ask more, but thought better of it. People always loved family drama stories, but I was far too tired to tell mine. That night, sitting alone in my small apartment, I realized something. I was no longer suffocating under a responsibility that was never mine to carry. I was truly living. No burden, no strings, no longer the shadows silently enduring within the family. On a Saturday morning, while scrolling through my phone, I got an unexpected call from Ms. Lorraine, the elderly neighbor who had lived next to my parents for over 2 decades. "Ellie, your mom asked if I knew anyone looking to buy a house. Seems like everything's falling apart," she whispered through the phone, her voice full of sympathy. I politely thanked her and hung up. No pang of guilt, no sense of triumph, just the calm of someone who had finally learned where the line must be drawn. Without me there to prop it up, that house, just like all the false expectations they had once placed on me, was finally crumbling. That evening, as I made myself a cup of hot cocoa, I realized sometimes love isn't about saving others from the consequences of their actions. Sometimes loving yourself means letting people face the results of the choices they made. If they had once seen me as a life raft, today I had untied the rope and swum to the safety of my own shore. No regrets, no anger, just a kind of growth that doesn't need an audience. I thought that after they realized they no longer had a financial crutch, everything would naturally stop. I had expected that shame would make them fall silent. But it turned out I had overestimated the self-awareness of people who had always been used to relying on others. The following week, a close friend, Olivia, sent me a message. "Ellie, you should get on Facebook right now. Your family is posting some really nasty stuff." I opened my phone. My heart as cold as the winter sky in Colorado. My mother's profile appeared, with a black and white photo of the old house, accompanied by a tearful caption, "Heartbroken that the child we sacrificed everything for has turned their back on us when we need them most. Please pray for our family to get through this hardship." Below were hundreds of shares, hundreds of comments full of sympathy, and full of criticism aimed at an unnamed, ungrateful child. I sat there, frozen. My father was no better. He posted a long status, lamenting about all the years he had raised me without asking for anything, about how they had always trusted me, only to now be betrayed. But what made me truly shudder was Claire's post. Some people only know how to be kind when they're standing above others. When the family needs them to stoop down and help, they disappear. That's what strength looks like these days. Part of me wanted to laugh at the absurdity. Another part just tasted bitter, like swallowing 5 winters all at once. They couldn't move me with family ties, with tears, with demands. So now they chose to smear me publicly. I put the phone down, sat silently for a long while. Then I opened my laptop and logged into the nearly abandoned Facebook account. I didn't write anything long-winded, didn't cry for sympathy, just simple, clear words. My family is sharing a very distorted version of the story. Here is the truth. I attached a photo of the will, clearly naming Claire as the sole heir. I attached photos of the mortgage bills, the utility bills, the payments that had been under my name for years. I posted screenshots of the message requesting $2,900, proof that they only remembered me when they needed money. At the end of the post, I wrote, "My previous silence wasn't consent. It was because I believed that one day the truth would speak for itself. Today, I choose to let that voice be heard. No filters, no embellishments, no attempt to look pitiful. 10 minutes later, the first comments appeared. Ellie, I can't believe it. You did all that alone? Family needs to be fair too. You don't owe them anything. So glad you spoke up. The post spread quickly. Friends, coworkers, even people who had once known my family from afar began sharing the truth. No one liked being lied to, and clearly this time, I was not the one at fault. 2 days later, I saw that my mother had quietly taken down all her posts. My father's Facebook account disappeared. Claire changed her profile picture to a white flower, her usual move whenever she wanted to imply victimhood without actually explaining anything. I didn't post anything more. No celebrating, no snide remarks. Because true victory wasn't about who won on social media. True victory was that I had reclaimed my voice. I sat in my small apartment, listening to the rain tapping softly against the window, and I knew that this time I had truly stepped out of the exhausting cycle. I didn't need an apology. I only needed freedom, and I had gotten it. After days of silence stretched tight like a taut string, I no longer heard any reproach or pleading. No message from Mom, no call from Dad, no passive-aggressive posts from Claire. That old world, the one that once tangled around me like a web, suddenly dissolved with a single sigh. I thought maybe they had finally understood. That I had stepped out of the game I'd been forced to play for so many years. But that emptiness wasn't as frightening as I had imagined. On the contrary, it felt like standing for the first time in an open field without ropes pulling me back. I began tidying up my life, one small corner at a time. I quit the extra weekend shifts at my old office, the job I had only kept to scrape together enough money to help cover my parents' mortgage. I signed up for an advanced photography class at the Boulder Art Center, a place I had walked past countless times but never dared to enter. On Monday morning, I stood in front of the classroom door, clutching my old camera, my heart pounding like a child's on the first day of school. The teacher, an old photographer with wrinkles etched deep and eyes still shining, smiled and asked, "What are you looking to find through the lens?" I smiled softly and answered simply, "The truth." And I found it, more than I had ever expected. I learned to see the world through frames, sunlight filtering through branches, an elderly hand gripping a warm coffee mug, a mother laughing brightly as her child stumbled and got back up. Each time I clicked the shutter, it felt like I was rewriting my own story, a life no longer bowed down to anyone, no longer twisted by things beyond my control. One evening, while editing photos in my small apartment, I received a text from Marcus, an old friend now working in real estate. "Ellie, your family's old house on Vine Street has dropped in price for the second time. No buyers. Heard the condition is terrible." I set my phone down. No lump rising in my throat, no tears threatening to spill. That house had once been my whole world, the place where I patched leaking roofs, laid down tile by tile, and carried the weight of endless utility bills. But now, it was just an empty shell, reflecting exactly what had long decayed inside the people who once lived there. I didn't smile. I didn't feel sad. I just exhaled, like setting down a heavy stone I had carried for far too long. A week later, during a small exhibit at a local coffee shop, I displayed my first photography collection. The photos weren't glamorous like those on Instagram, nor perfectly curated like a travel blogger's feed. They were simple, raw, and piercing. An old pair of shoes left by a porch, a cracked wall reflecting the afternoon sun, a bare tree standing firm against seasonal winds. A middle-aged woman approached, holding a cappuccino in her hand. "Your photos. There's something very real about them," she whispered. "Like someone is finally speaking for all the people who have stayed silent for too long." I simply smiled. No need to say more, because that was exactly what I had done. I had once kept silent, thinking that love meant enduring. But now I understood. True love is knowing when to stop, knowing how to protect yourself before you're drowned. And every time I pressed the shutter, every time I wrote another blog post sharing experiences of breaking free from toxic relationships, I took one more step toward the life I had chosen, a life free, unapologetic, and unburdened. I stopped hoping they would change, I stopped waiting for an apology. I had walked away from the storm and left it all behind. Light, serene. And I knew this time I wouldn't look back. Autumn arrived in Boulder like a gentle reminder that everything would eventually change, whether we wanted it to or not. Every morning, I walked around the park near my home, camera in hand, capturing the fallen yellow leaves on the sidewalks, the last rays of sunlight weaving through the nearly bare trees. My life, finally, had returned to a rhythm I once thought was a luxury, peaceful, slow, and free. But the past, like an uninvited guest, still found ways to knock on the door sometimes. One Thursday afternoon, as I was editing a batch of photos for a new blog post, the phone rang. The caller ID showed the old landline number, the number I had known by heart throughout my childhood. I let it ring. Once. Twice. By the third ring, I turned off the ringer without the slightest hesitation. A message came immediately after. "Ellie, it's Mom. There's a big problem with the house. Your sister doesn't know how to handle it. Your father and I don't know what to do. Can you help? Just one more time?" I placed the phone face down on the table and leaned back in my chair. One more time. Those words echoed in my head, like an old song I'd once believed was immortal. But now, they were just hollow echoes. Just one more time. How many times had I heard that phrase? How many times had I believed that this time would be the last? And how many times, after each "just one more time," did I find myself sinking deeper into the bottomless swamp of obligation and sacrifice? I sighed, stood up, and brewed a cup of peppermint tea. The small apartment was eerily quiet. The sound of running water, the faint fragrance of tea, the soft glow of the yellow lamp, all of it seemed to whisper to me, "Don't go back." I took a sip of tea, picked up my phone, and typed a single message. "I have helped enough for a lifetime. Now it's time for you and Claire to learn how to take responsibility." I hit send. No waiting for a reply. No longer the searing guilt that used to tear my heart apart every time I said no. No more sleepless nights, wondering if I was being too cruel. Only the serenity of someone who finally understood you cannot save people who don't want to save themselves. A week later, while teaching a photography class for teenagers at the art center, I heard from an acquaintance that my family's old house had been officially foreclosed by the bank. This time, there were no desperate emails, no frantic calls, only silence, heavy and clinging, with no more lifelines left. A part of me wanted to feel sad. But the part of me that had grown through the loneliest winters just shook its head. You can't keep saving a ship that has already chosen to crash into the rocks. And more importantly, it was no longer my responsibility. I focused on what was blooming in my life. My classes growing more crowded, my blog gaining readers and heartfelt thank you messages, my photography being selected to be displayed in a local cafe. I dedicated my Sunday evenings to the little things I had once traded away to save a family that never truly valued me. Baking, reading, learning new photo editing techniques. Each small act, each simple moment, were bricks I was laying down to build my new life. No one saved me. No one made up for the forgotten years. I saved myself. And that was enough. One night, as I sat reviewing the photos I had taken throughout the year, I realized something. Everything I once thought I needed from others, recognition, gratitude, love, I had found within my own view of the world. No one had the right to decide my worth but me. My family, the ones who once held the power to make me feel invisible, were now just part of my past. A hard-earned, costly lesson, but a necessary one. I turned off the lights, letting the room sink into the dim glow of the city outside the window. For the first time in a long while, I smiled, a truly light, unburdened smile. No more weight, no more chains. Just me, free, walking forward, on the path I chose myself. Winter swept into Boulder like a quiet blanket, covering rooftops, bare trees, and even the houses that had lost their laughter. I sat in my warm apartment, watching the snow drift slowly outside the window, and realized, this year, for the first time in many years, I didn't feel trapped among broken pieces. My old family, Mom, Dad, and Claire, had now taken a different path that I no longer belonged to. The rumors, the whispers, had faded with time. People were busy with new stories, new scandals, and I was busy living the new life I had chosen. Instead of clinging to broken threads, I began weaving new ones, relationships built on freedom, respect, and sincerity. At the art center, I grew close to Mia, a mural painter whose eyes always sparkled with endless passion. She didn't ask why I was alone. She simply invited me over for Christmas dinner to a small apartment filled with golden lights and the smell of baked cinnamon rolls. No one talked about obligation, duty, or sacrifice. We simply shared our dreams, our failures, our foolish wishes that had once been hidden away. And for the first time, I understood a simple but profound concept. Family doesn't have to be the people who gave birth to you. True family is the people who choose to stay, even when they owe you nothing. I continued writing my blog about my healing journey. Surprisingly, those heartfelt posts attracted many sympathetic readers. Some wrote letters sharing how they too had been emotionally manipulated by family, how they had once thought themselves selfish simply for daring to put themselves first. Each line of those confessions felt like a quiet affirmation. I was not alone. One evening, while replying to an email from a young girl in Florida who had just decided to move out of a toxic stepmother's house, I realized I had become the version of myself I once dreamed of. Not the perfect sacrifice, but someone who chose love, kindness, and boundaries for herself. I also started accepting invitations to speak at small workshops for people seeking to escape toxic family relationships. Every time I stood before those hopeful eyes, I saw one truth clearly. Everyone deserves a life where they don't have to apologize for choosing themselves. In early January, I received a handwritten letter. It was from Mom. The handwriting was still familiar, shakier than before. She wrote about Dad's declining health, about Claire struggling to find steady work, about the old house now surviving only in memory. At the end of the letter, she wrote, "I don't expect you to come back. I just want you to know that, even if late, I understand. I'm sorry for making you carry so much. I hope you live happily, in the way you deserve." I folded the letter and placed it into a small wooden box, where I kept things that once hurt me, but were now just part of a larger journey. I didn't reply, not out of anger, but because I knew. Some endings don't need to be prolonged with meaningless conversations. Some endings are most beautiful in peaceful silence, where each person must own the consequences of what they created. The next morning, I went outside, camera in hand. The park was still blanketed in white snow. A small child was learning to walk on the soft snow, stumbling and then getting up on his own, laughing out loud. The mother beside him didn't rush over to pick him up, only smiled and clapped her hands in encouragement. I raised my camera and captured that moment. A moment of freedom, of courage, needing no rescue. Just like me now. Life goes on, and this time, I am the one holding my own hand, leading myself through the cold days, no longer looking back. I have found family within myself, and I know that is the strongest home I have ever had.